Okay. So as I was saying, anyway, welcome back again.
Welcome back.
So as I was saying, Clubhouse is actually an app that allows you to hang out, with people, just like we do on Zoom and on. But this is purely a voice app that takes in quite a lot of people at a go for you to have a discussion. So you can imagine class assignment or group work, all right? You can host your group work on Clubhouse where all of you are at a particular, obviously you're not in a particular place, you're in your individual houses. But then the app allows you to moderate. So you can have those who are actually organizing it as moderators, as speakers. So you can admit someone as a speaker, or unadmit them as a speaker. So that facilitates group work in the first place because the voice quality is so good, and because it's not using video, I think interruption is minimal. Now, so you can imagine that if you are a sales guy, all right, or you work with a company as a freelance sales guy, you could use it for product launch, all right? You can launch product on that. You can do demonstrations of product. You can actually, onboard customers on that, so many things. So it means that you can actually do a product launch for companies. You can review products for companies because you can set up a room for people to come in. Imagine that you have signed up with a particular insurance company to sell for them. All right. You create a room, a demonstration room. People come in and you describe the insurance product, what it is, its features, what it can do, and perhaps provide a link for people to go on to sign up. Do you get it? So there's a lot of possibilities. You do not have to actually work for one company now. You can work for so many other companies just because you have access to technology. You get it? So you're limiting your amount of movement. So instead of the traditional way as salespeople worked, driving cars across, to customers' places and speaking to them, by the time you spend 30 minutes, they haven't even signed up to the product. Now you can sit in your house, comfort of your home, host people on these apps, and then sell them product. You know. So I think that your world has been simplified by technology. Of course, the amount of connectivity or tools that are available can be overwhelming, and so it can stress you out. But look at it from the positive perspective, the perspective that it enhances the way you do things and it can actually improve on your productivity levels, etc. It's absolutely amazing. So for me, yes, it is that angle of interpersonal relationship where you want to have a physical, contact with people, is actually taken away. But you could as well, bring that in by having a combined or a fusion approach of doing things. Maybe one day meeting and then the rest of the day is digital. And then of course, making sure that you do the balance or you make the balance in a way that does not actually the sort of hurt some kind of relationship that you have, because majority of you stay on the internet even when you have a date. I've seen quite a lot of people at restaurant and each of them are on their phones. It happens, isn't it? Hmm? Darius.
Yes, sir, it really happens.
Yeah, people go on date and each of them is on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point in going for date?
So
You
the
see
food.
the food. You see people in a club and still they're holding their phones. Why is that? Eh?
So they need to snap it.
You go to club to dance, isn't it? So you see people holding their phones. People go on football matches, they go to stadiums and they're holding their phone. So many other things. But anyway, so I think that you guys have to, take advantage of the emerging, environment, the technology.
So
Yep.
maybe you want to drop a link to Clubhouse so we can follow and join as well in the
Okay,
chat box.
okay, that's a good idea. For those of you who are not social media, oriented, I think you'll be missing a lot, or you're missing a lot. A lot of people, their social media is just WhatsApp. And let me say that Clubhouse for now is in a beta version, which they're using iOS. So those of you on some other phones, the only phone is Apple, isn't it? iPhone is the only phone. If you're on other phones, you probably may not have access to Clubhouse now until they come to the other phones. But for now, it's only on.
Is there a web version that we can access from our computers for those who don't have an iPhone?
Yeah, I think I haven't seen a web version. I probably have to search. But I think because they're testing it, they're using iOS to test.
Oh, it's in the beta stage.
Yeah, it's in the beta stage. So they haven't actually opened up. But I'll check and confirm. Okay, guys, welcome back. Let's move on. The last week, the conversation, where did we get to, please? Now, I let me say that I praised you guys to the main campus student, not as though wanting to instigate competition, but I told them that, yes, I thought you guys were quite effective in engaging than they had been. So they have to up their game. And they said that, okay, they apologized. They will up their game. So you also don't want to disappoint me by hyping you and then taking me to the another level. You understand the point I'm making?
Yes, no.
Okay, so
Yes,
after hyping you, if I get any, underperformance, I'll go and tell them that you've changed your behavior. so
We'll do better.
You do better. Okay, so after hyping you, I don't want to see any slump in performance.
Okay.
So I'm just checking on the Clubhouse. I think the invite only social media app. Okay, I don't think it has a web version, Darius.
okay.
Right. So I suppose they haven't come to that yet. So those of you who are on iOS, yes, check it out. Look at the possibilities and start making use of it, because I've started making use of it anyway.
So those of us with other phones, we are offended.
Those of you with other phone, it's iPhone or nothing. I mean, that's what I believe. Don't take me on.
Let's stop lying.
So we are offended. Okay.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
are you on the phone or you're on other?
Sir, please, I didn't get you.
I'm saying, are you on the phone or you're on other? If I say the phone is iPhone and other, are you on the
Please, no. I'm on the other.
You're on the Okay, so who is on the phone?
So we are on the phone. Michael, Adam, what's up?
We are here.
Adija.
Yeah. Anita.
Those people.
We are on the phone.
Anita is on the phone. Emmanuel is on the phone.
Khadija.
Khadija, you're on the phone, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Who are the others?
The
Sir,
others
they are
include...
plenty. They won't talk manual.
But that's the reality, isn't it? iPhone is everybody's ambition, especially for those on the other. It's like
Sir,
Yeah, I
no,
think they have a
not me.
great competition from OnePlus.
Michael, why are you saying no?
Say something.
It's more like everyone is going that way. Why should you also go that way?
Are you sure that if you start to make loads of money, you're not going to transit into iPhone?
There is a possibility, but
Exactly, that hesitation tells it. Suddenly it's the phone that people aspire to. For those who do not have it, I mean, somebody is mentioning some names. Some what?
Samsung.
Hey, say.
Okay, that's good. All right, that's just by the way. It's something, you know. I'm not sure what it is. I have to do susu.
Susu.
Priscilla, you have to do susu for iPhone. Certainly, you need to, because as for me, I don't really recognize the others as phones, but because there's only
Hey.
it's pressure, right? Anyway, guys, let's start. All right, so Khadija, the way they are upgrading is too much. Of course, that's innovation. I mean, any forward-looking organization is always looking at how to better. So, yeah. Anyhow, so let's go on. Where did we get to last week? Who can start us? You know, from last week conversation. Yeah, we can begin. Where were we last week? Where did we get to last week? Yeah, Benedicta, leadership by example. Let's hear you.
Dog.
Yeah. Where did we get to?
Last week, the last thing we spoke about was the digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
The now and when of e-marketing.
Okay. So we were here, right?
Yes, please.
Are you sure we didn't move to this place?
We moved.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure we were up to this place.
We did this place as well.
Mm-hmm. We were up to
so this was the last slide.
This was the 4 P's to 4 C's.
Yes, please.
Okay. Cool. So who can remind us of the discussion, the conversations we had quickly? You know, we do not have enough time. We have very few weeks to accomplish a lot. And as I said, I've acquired a simulation software from Harvard that cost me a lot of money. And we need to do that simulation as your assessment. Yes, Juliana, I was waiting for you. I've never heard your voice. Okay.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning, Juliana. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, start with us.
So we talked about the 4 P's moving to the 4 C's in the sense that the 4 C's are in relation to the customers, not the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about the price to be the cost to consumer. And that's the things the customer is able or willing to forgo in order to get the product, or the cost the customer is willing to incur to acquire the product. And we talked about the convenience being in the customer sense, as in making the product easily accessible by the company to the customers. Mm-hmm. And we also talked about the product or service being the customer's need and want. Mm-hmm. In that the customer, what the customer is actually in need of, or the service the customer really wants. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about the promotion being the communication, like the feedback the customer will give or things like that.
Excellent. I like your comprehensiveness. I mean, certainly that's exactly what we discussed. And then to throw more light on the product and services as customer needs, we understood that, the customer needs is not only, restricted to the core product or the core services that they're asking for, but we're talking about all the other needs, including information needs, all right? The idea that the customer may need certain information to act on in order that the purchase can go through. And that includes feedbacks, that includes inquiries, because if someone calls you to make an inquiry, what you do not know is that the inquiry is as of value as the product itself, isn't it? Because the inquiry is a clarity by the time the person is actually calling you for inquiry, itself is the product, because that engagement, all right, is a need that they want or they need to satisfy, all right? So do not see customer inquiry as subservient to the product needs. And that's why attitude to inquiries is very, very, it's very, very limited, or it's very disadvantaged, it's a disadvantage to the business. If you do not have a very positive attitude to customer inquiry, you're most likely not to make a sale, because at that particular moment of time, what they need is information in order that they can act on to buy the product. So you have to see the value of inquiries just as you see the value of the actual product or services that the person is buying. Do you get it? Do you get a point? So we actually talked about the conversion of the 4 P's into the 4 C's from the perspective of the customer, in order that we could make the products and services much more accessible. We can actually satisfy the customer's needs satisfactorily. All right, so let's move on with the conversation. So if you look at the comparison between transactional marketing and relationship marketing, we say that these characteristics are of transactional marketing: orientation to single sale, which means that in most transactional, oriented businesses or activity, the attention is only on the actual sale, all right? The one-off sale that the person is making, all right? Without looking at the future, recurrence, or the future sales, or the future activities. It's a discontinued, relationship. So discontinuous customer contact. So customer contact is one-off. They come to the shop or over the phone or whatever. After that, there's no follow-up. There's nothing, all right? Focus on product features. We're only paying attention to the actual features of the product, no other attention. Short-term scale, little emphasis on customer services, etc. And if you compare that to relationship, you have orientation to customer retention. So in a relationship thinking organizational activity, you're looking at how do you retain the customer beyond the first sale, over into the future. So that's the relationship and then transactional compared, over there. All right. We also, okay, so let's come to the topic, relationship forming. How do firms form relationships and how do they maintain it? Now, you remember that the first day that we had a conversation, we were discussing about the set of relationships that we have and how we actually go about them, the characteristics of those relationships, and the factor that actually impact on those relationships, all right, which we talked about: shared interests, shared values, so many other things that we talked about. In the same way, organizations have relationships. Now, let me ask you that if you look at the set of relationships that you have, all right, what role do you think you have in that relationship? So take one set of relationship and tell me, what role do you think you play in that relationship? Are you the buyer or you are the seller? Are you the consumer or you are the supplier in the relationship that you have? So take one relationship and describe what you think your roles are. Yeah? Juliana, your hand is up. Is it the old one or new?
There's the old one, but let me try.
Okay, try it. So you can mention the set of relationship that you have and then tell us what your role is in it, whether you're a buyer or a seller or you're a consumer or supplier.
Okay, so say in my family relationship, it depends on the particular circumstance. Sometimes I'm the buyer, sometimes I'm the consumer.
Excellent.
So for instance, if I call parents for financial support or something, in that instance I become the consumer. But if my younger siblings call me for financial help, in that instance I become the supplier.
Excellent. Amazing contest. I love that. That should earn you extra 5 marks anyway. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, great. So remind me and remind Gilbert, all right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I love the contextual, perspective that you put on that family relationship. Okay, who else? wants to come in? Who else? Please pump up. Otherwise, I'll go and, pump you down. I told you, I big you up, and I don't want my big ups to go in vain. Yeah? Who else want to come in?
Doug.
Yes, Benedicta.
Okay, so in the business context,
now let's deal with the social relationships before you come to business. Okay, in your private business, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so when I'm buying from my wholesaler, I am the buyer and the wholesaler is the seller. But when the final consumers are buying from me, my customers, I'm the seller and they're also the buyers.
Okay, good one. That's a very nice one as well. All right, Khadija, let's listen to you and what you provided.
I was like, what, like, really, most of the relationship, like the dating, the boyfriend, girlfriend.
We're not saying most of the relationship. Take your relationship. So your dating relationship. Yes. No. She wants to hide it. Khadija, hide it. Go on.
So in most of the relationships, the guys are the suppliers and the ladies are consumers.
No, start again. Khadija, start again. We're saying that your relationship. Yeah.
Like in most of our
what is difficult for you, Khadija?
Girlfriend relationships. In terms of maybe financial obligations and other aspects, the guys are mostly the suppliers and the ladies are the consumers. That's what I want to say.
Okay, I'm sure you're going to have a very strong criticisms coming your way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so that's Khadija's point. And she rather said most relationships instead of saying her relationship.
No, she should give us hers. We want to hear his.
Okay, but I suspect that she wants to say that in her boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, she's the consumer.
Oh, no, I'm a romance sister.
Hey, okay.
Khadija.
Yeah, it's possible. But I'm surprised that she says the romance sister. Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
She's a supplier.
All right. So who else want to say? Okay, Sandra.
Sir.
Yes, Sandra.
In this lecture, you are the supplier.
Yes.
We are the consumers.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's a good one, Sandra. Very good observation. Yeah, who else? Who else? Any other set of relationship and the role that you are playing? Okay, so now let's move on to the next question. Now, so we've identified that contextually from what, Juliana said, contextually, the role can change, all right? But predominantly one would belong to, one side or the other. Now, in these relations that we've discussed, what is your level of motivation, or what is the level of motivational investment in the relationship, all right? So if you take your relationship that you're talking about, are you the one who motivates more or who is more motivated to keep the relationship, or the other party is more motivated to keep the relationship? Let's come to Khadija. Khadija, who is more motivated to keep the relationship?
It depends. It can be mutual, it can be maybe one-sided, but most of the times it depends. Yeah.
So we want the most of times one, the predominant one.
The guys.
The guys are motivated to keep the relationship.
The guys are motivated to keep the relationship, yeah.
Okay, great. Juliana?
So in my opinion, is the consumer or the buy in the family system, for instance, the children are more motivated to keep the relationship because they know that they are the ones going to benefit more from. So it's the one who is benefiting more that is more motivated to keep the relationship.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So the beneficiary is the one that's more motivated or invest more to keep the relationship. Okay, who else? Who else want to say something? Yeah? Benedicta.
Juliana said what I wanted to say. So it's always the one benefiting more that's always committed.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we know that relationship involves parties, and certainly, as we said earlier on, we're looking at we looked at factors that actually influence the maintenance of relationship, which we talked about, interest, benefits, shared values, etc. In businesses as well, obviously businesses have different forms of relationship that they keep. Now, either they are on the supply side or they are on the consumption side. Either they are the sellers or they are the buyers, all right? So we're saying that in a relationship where on this construct, you can see the horizontal and the vertical axis, where the horizontal has the buyer motivational investment in a relationship, being graded low or high, where the vertical, again, you have the seller motivational investment relationship in the relationship, high or low. So we're saying that whenever there is a higher seller motivational investment in the relationship, but there's a lower buyer motivational investment in the relationship, that relationship is called seller maintained relationship, right? So whenever the seller's motivation is high to keep the relationship, but the buyer's motivation is low in keeping the relationship, it is called seller maintained relationship. Now, where the relationship is high on both sides, i.e., the seller has a higher motivation to keep the relationship and the buyer has a high motivation to keep the relationship, it is called a bilateral relationship, all right? And then if it's high on the buyer side, but low on the seller side, again, it becomes a buyer maintained relationship. And if it is low on both sides, it is a discrete exchanges, which means that there is no attempt to keep a relationship. So the relationship is on a transactional basis. You buy and you go, and nobody checks you up, etc. All right. It's just like a relationship that, or an engagement, if I should use that word instead of using relationship, an engagement that does not actually, or is not actually valued by both parties per se, but they just want to let it, they just want to let it be as it is, all right? So in a discrete relationship, there is no, or in a discrete engagement, there is no attempt to actually keep or take the relationship to a level. It is all on the daily basis, that kind of thing. So Andy says, my network is fluctuating. Okay, so you want to change your position and see whether it would improve. So in this case, who can tell me in a situation in terms of commercial or business sense, a situation that you find the relationship as a seller maintained? Which industry? Sometimes the industry itself can lend itself to a buyer maintained or a seller maintained relationship or a bilateral relationship. What industry or what circumstances or what instance do you think you would find a seller maintained relationship? Which instance do you think you'll find a seller maintained relationship? Which organizational or commercial instance do you think you would find a seller maintained relationship? Sandra?
I would say insurance, the insurance sector.
Fantastic. Yeah, give it some perspectives. Throw some more light on it.
Ghanaians are not particularly interested in insurance like in the Western world. So the insurance company use every available means to get people to join, to come on going for insurance packages.
Excellent. So from the insurance perspective, you have more of a seller-maintained relationship than a buyer-maintained relationship. So that tells you that in industries that, have similar characteristics, especially in what do you call it, that kind of industry as a sector, as Sandra actually pointed out, you're likely to have a more seller initiatives, a more seller motivation investment going in than a buyer. So if you find yourself working in an insurance firm, you are not likely to have similar attitudes just like you would do in maybe FMCG or fast-moving consumer goods, because customers do not, naturally, or ordinarily go out of their way to pull the product. You have to push it. So you have to keep, pushing in effort in order that you can maintain that relationship. Good one. Godson.
Yes, sir. So in a situation where there is high competition, let's maintain the relationship.
Yeah, where there's high competition, what happens?
The seller must maintain the relationship.
Excellent.
Or else, yes, sir.
Excellent, fantastic. So in a very competitive, a highly competitive market, the seller must maintain relationship. Why? Because the customer has a choice, isn't it? So the buyer is not necessarily motivated to keep you. They could actually, switch in any way. That's why you see in industries like telecommunication, a very highly competitive market, the suppliers are always, coming out with promotion here and there. The same applies to the banks, all right? Now, these are highly competitive markets. So the suppliers have to do a lot more to invest into the relationship in keeping the customers. Fantastic. Yvonne, is it Yvonne or Yoni? Sorry. Is it Yoni? Did I pronounce it right? Hello? Is that Yvonne? Yvonne?
Please, it's Yvonne.
Yvonne, okay, you lost the V. Okay. Yeah, go on.
Sir, please. Hi.
Hello.
Yes, sir, please. Hawkers.
Yeah, hawkers. Those who hawk along the street, along the road, right? Is it seller or buyer maintained?
Yes.
Which one? Yvonne,
Sir, please come again. My network is bad.
Okay, so you said the hawkers, those who hawk along the road. Which of the relations? Is it buyer maintained or seller maintained?
Sir, I'm saying I don't.
Okay, I think we have a terrible line for Yvonne. She will come again. Who else want to add? Or who can answer the hawking, part of it? Okay, Juliana, go ahead. Juliana, go ahead.
So I think it's a sellers maintain relationship.
Okay.
Because when you see them, they are the ones always forcing buyers to purchase their goods, and the buyers are not really usually interested in. But I also think that it depends on the products the person is selling, because those who hawk with water, sachet water and bottle water and things like that, you see that people are always interested in buying. So in my opinion, it depends on the product the seller is hawking.
Okay, I think is a good example that we can actually expand on it. Now, why do you think hawking, for example, of course you've actually given an instance, but I need a particular reason that's generic. Why do you think people who hawk are in a seller-maintained relationship, apart from the idea that they chase the customers, as we have been saying? So that's an attribute that shows that it's a seller-maintained. But why do you think they have to chase? What are the conditions that make, a hawking as a seller maintained as opposed to buyer maintained?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. I think it's competitive since you get a lot of people selling pure waters, like 10 or 5 people selling the same product.
Fantastic.
So I think the seller maintain relationship because you have to force the buyer to buy your pure water.
Fantastic.
If not, the person will look elsewhere because we have a lot of competitors.
Okay, that's great. So one, the competition within a hawking environment makes a hawking, as a seller maintained. That's one condition. Fantastic, observation. Who else can give another observation why hawking is likely to be, it is a seller maintained relationship? Why? Darius.
Yeah, so I think that because it's conditional buying, because you know that sometimes you're trying to showcase your product with the hope that you find somebody who wants to buy, because people don't basically like go out wanting to, let's say, buy shoe polish, or they want to change their car screen wiper. So you realize that the hawkers realize that, okay, so if they bring the product to you, chances that they can condition you to do impulse buying on some of these things.
Fantastic. That's the word. So a lot of the hawking, relationship, it's impulse. All right. It is not necessarily a predetermined need that most people have. So that particular condition makes it a seller maintained because, the consumer at that material moment hadn't really conditioned, their minds, or haven't actually predetermined to buy. They're always buying on impulse, So in most cases, impulse buying relationship or impulse conditions actually makes the relationship more of a seller maintained. Amazing. Thank you for that. Who else can actually, okay, so Owusu Achor says, because of the traffic light, time conditions, excellent. So again, with the idea that is a time constrained, relationship. And again, you see that the customer is on the move, there is no geographical, the customer is not actually geographically bound within a particular, instance. I mean, the person is on the move. And so that transition or that transient kind of condition actually makes it, much more of a seller maintained because, that individual is on the move. They could be in another geographical point, they could be exposed to another, set of what do you call customers. So at that material point, you're actually pushing the product. So yeah, these are the conditions that make, hawking, for example, to be a much more a seller, maintained, kind of what do you call environment. And you realize that the product types that are always, up for hawking are that character of, fast moving consumer goods, for example, consumables. And these characteristics of, or the characteristics of these products actually make it much more seller maintained. So yeah, these are the instances. Of course, we're talking about, seller maintained or, buy maintained conditions, but we should also know that they're not static. Sometimes you could have a highly seller maintained characteristics of an environment, all right, but the condition can change. As Juliana said, someone, must have or might have actually bought several times from a particular, what do you call a hawker. They may end up developing relationship. This person may now condition to buy from that hawker every now and then, and the relationship can change to a more bilateral one. All right. So yes, predominantly, but sometimes there could be contextual, changes. Good point. All right. So when we looked at the what do you call the relationships, these are some of the variables that actually influence relationship, and we have a customer loyalty and integrated in a model, that actually influence, relationships. And you can see that, quality being expressed in terms of the image, in terms of price, would influence the value, relative to what competitors actually provided. It will go ahead to attract and retain customers. And then of course, the market share and profitability of the organization will go up. So these are the factors, but of course they will be, moderated by barriers to switching, that is the barriers in the competition or individual organizational characteristics, and of course, market environment and experiences. So you can go ahead to actually read about those frameworks in the book, which I have actually shared already. Now, in our relationships, in terms of organizational relationships, and even in our own private relationships, you realize that there are certain characteristics that people have that makes it much more relatable than others. We tend to find that, in our local, dealing, some people say, some people are easy to deal with, others are not. There is a cliche that sometimes people say, for those who understand tree. In English, it says that people sometimes don't feel comfortable with other people, and they say, I always get angry when I meet this guy. People have some features that makes them relatable or not relatable. All right. And we experience that in our daily lives. The same way organizations, as people, you have some staff, for example, that are very, amenable to relationship, or their characteristics actually lend themselves to relationship. All right. And so such, kind of relationship, when they are built, that is between the staff and the customers, they are capital, all right, to the business. So we have what we call the concept of structural capital, and how structural capital has to be maintained. So we're saying that in organization, I remember when we discussed the 4P, the 3 extra P's to the 4 P's, like the people factor. We said that we have to identify the characteristics of the people and how that could be enhanced in order to form relationships. At the same time, we talked about the process part of the 3 P's, being that we have to make sure that we can codify the processes, we can codify the process in the firm and use it as a standard to train, so that almost every staff would behave similarly or behave almost the same way, in order that we can actually have a set of assured output, or a standardized output that would reduce the heterogeneity character of services. So in that sense, we say that the organization's ability and success in tying individual a staff or individual person's knowledge and reputation to its structures is what we call structural capital. So if there's someone in the firm, a staff, and that person's worth of knowledge, product knowledge, organizational knowledge, and even their external knowledge, they become so resourceful that customers always want to deal with them. They have a reputation of competence, they have a reputation of reliability, they have a reputation of good customer relations. How do we successfully tie that relationship into the business, so that just in case the customer or the staff leave the business, just in case the staff leaves the business, the customers will not follow suit, all right? Will not follow just to say that because Juliana had left the business school, I'm also leaving, following Juliana where she's gone. When organizations don't take care of their structural capital, in terms of the bond and the relationships that staff form with customers, they stand to lose whenever the staff is losing, is leaving, or when attrition is high. All right. So we have to identify, ways that we can deal with staff attrition and customer attrition when that situation happens. So how do you think organizations, can, what do you think organizations can do to tie in the knowledge and the reputations and the relationships that staff have with customers, in order that when they leave, customers don't leave? Yeah, what can organizations do in terms of embedding structural capital in the firm? What can organizations do? Yeah. So I'll give you a typical example. You go to a salon or a barber shop, and there's a particular staff that always you want them to do your hair. Now this person says they are leaving, and they leave, and you're also thinking of leaving because that's the only person you can be sure of doing your hair the way you like it. How does this salon or barber shop embed this particular skill set into the business, so that, or this relationship into the business, so that when they leave, the customers don't leave as well? Who can answer that? What are the approaches or the activities that organization train the other employees? Okay, Victor, a good one. Can you elaborate on it, please?
Okay, when you finish.
Okay, Victor.
Hello.
Hi, Victor.
Hello. Yes. So we spoke about the 7Ps, including the people. And since the employees also work for the organization, it's best if the organization can train the other employees to render services that are equal to that of the one employee that people mostly want, for them to have him render services onto them. So I think the best thing the organization can do is to reduce variability. It needs to train most of the employees to render services such as the one that most of the customers prefer.
Okay, excellent. So the good point, Victor is making is that that particular trait has to be identified and be used as the standard to train, rest of the staff, in order that they could actually give similar, output to reduce, variability. Fantastic point. All right, Benedicta.
So Doug, yes, so training is key. And then in retail strategy, we learned something that train your employees and then take care of your employees and they'll take care of your customers. So the manager or the boss should take a very good care of the employees, train them well. Yes. Make them happy in their business so that they can really take care of the customer. Because when they are happy and the customers come, it shows on their faces and they welcome them very well.
Fantastic. So the idea of internal marketing, making sure that you implement the same or similar customer-centric, programs as you would, for customers internally, so that staff, would be excited, to work with the business and then keep, the capital within. All right, good point. Thank you. All right, Sandra, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. With the example of the salon and barbering shop, I had an experience with that. And then what the salon owner does is to include it in their policies that a worker in the salon shouldn't give his or her personal contact to customers. And then they don't have the right to provide home services without permission from the owner.
Excellent.
So I believe if it's embedded in the company's policies, that will help.
Excellent. Fantastic example. So again, policies in terms of how relationship is managed within the firm could actually ensure structural capital is maintained. Amazing example. So you have to actually put it in employees' conditions of service for them to be clear of the rules of engagement, that personal contact are not given, X and Y are not given. And so, you're managed to actually put, keep that the relationship within the firm. But of course, that's the hard fact of it. The soft part is that, yes, they may not give contact, etc. When the customer comes in the business and finds that Osumesi has left, they may informally go ahead to look for where they are and leave. So in as much as policy works, you also want to do other things in order that you could, keep the relationship. So good point, Sandra. Juliana, let's listen to
So mine is a contribution and a question.
Okay.
So some people, no matter what you do, like if you train other people, like if you train, let's say you're in a salon and there's one particular hairdresser that gets many customers, and you train the other hairdressers to work like the main hairdresser who gets more customers. No matter what you do, when the people come and they don't meet that particular hairdresser, they will still not want to do their hair there. So my question is it important for you to focus on retaining the hairdresser that you know that brings you more customers, or the other factors will help you retain the customers with the other hairdressers.
Okay, good observation. So we talk about what do you call apprenticeship or secondment as another way of keeping structural relationship or embedding it in the business, which Juliana pointed out. So we know that this staff is the best that everybody wants to relate to. So we second someone with similar characteristics. Maybe Ajua has similar characteristics, with Sandra, and we think that okay, if we second Ajua, to Sandra and work with Sandra, it would be good because Ajua would then pick up the traits of Sandra and then of course get exposed to customers. Now in that arrangement, it can be done, but it means that Sandra has to make a lot more effort to introduce Ajua in a positive light to the customers as, oh, hi, meet Ajua. Ajua is just like, oh, we are good friends, etc. Now, there's likely to be a transfer of goodwill from Sandra to Ajua, even if Sandra is not there. So that they say, oh, where is your boss? Oh, she's gone out, or he's so and so. Okay, then the relationship continues. But as Juliana said, in some instances, regardless of how good your secondment or your apprenticeship program is, you probably would still have customers who are not really enthused about dealing with the second person. And I think we have actually had a situation in the Ghanaian music industry. I'm sure those of you who follow music, you know the story about Ebony and Wendy Shea, right? Where the support base of Ebony is still finding it difficult to accept, Wendy Shea as a replacement. And there had been quite a number of discussions going on, which people say that Bullet was trying to replace Wendy Shea with, Ebony with Wendy Shea. And people say she's not like Ebony. I mean, she's a, so to speak, a copycat or, and people are finding it difficult to accept that replacement. So in that instance, as Juliana is saying, you want to add on other factors. For example, reward schemes, for example, reward system, in order that the customer may value that reward system to the extent that they do not want to lose it. So it means that increasing the exit barrier, all right? Because if it's just about the relationship, the bond that they have, with the staff, when the staff leaves, they may leave. So can you then raise the bar, the cost of exit, so that they may consider other benefits that if they leave, they may not get, all right? And based on that, they could keep the relationship, all right? So Juliana, your question is right. You do not want to only rely on the apprenticeship scheme or the, the secondment scheme, but you want to add other benefits that if the customer leaves, they would find it difficult to forgo. And so they will say, okay, well, at least I'm getting X and Y. Maybe there's a credit facility that you have that when they come, they may not actually pay it, the same day. They could actually stagger the payment because of their long-term relationship with the firm. They can even buy on credit, on 3 months credit or whatever. They can have a letter of credit, and pay it later. Now, that convenience of payment may be very attractive to them that they will find it difficult leaving, even if the best staff that they work with leaves. Are you with me? Do you guys follow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Godson says, sir, please, I think the business needs to build a good organizational brand that even if that particular employee is leaving, the customers will stay. Example, the customer know he or she is going there because of Kofi, but if he or she is not there now, he has trust in the others that it won't be that bad. That's a good point, Godson. So a very strong brand, making sure that staff performances are equal. They almost, do similar stuff so that they can keep the customer. Juliana, you have something to say?
So, with the apprenticeship program, I feel like if the best hairdresser is maybe braiding the hair, they can let the seconder come and braid some parts of the hair so that the customer also gets used to that person, so that it will not be one. Because if let's say Ama is the best hairdresser and she only tells the customer that, oh, AC is also good, but the customer hasn't seen AC's handwork or seen AC braiding anybody's hair or even their own hair, they will not still have the confidence in AC like in Amma. So I think
Excellent.
Amma should give opportunity to AC to also braid her hair.
Excellent. So the apprenticeship program has to be effective, like performing with the seconder, every time. So both of you can be braiding the hair together, just like Juliana is. So you have to have an effective apprenticeship program or secondment program that could effectively transfer skills and attitudes onto the what do you call the second person or the seconder, in order that could equally affect that output. Good point. All right, Benedicta.
Yes, though. So to add to what Juliana said, some customers stick to the hairdressers on different bases. One would be how the hairdresser treats hair, maybe how she welcomes her when they are waiting for you, or is it when you is how they treat you. Some too is how they braid your hair for you, like the compliment you get from your friends. So you always want that hairdresser to braid your hair for you. Some people are naturally good. So I think the organization should also train the customers very well, the hairdressers very well, so that they do the work on point. Whenever you come and you don't even meet your preferred hairdresser, you are free and you can still stay and braid your hair.
Excellent. Good point made. Okay. So that's what we've discussed, embedded knowledge as relationship criteria, making sure that to actually keep structural capital, we are actually finding ways to embed knowledge and relationships in the business. Okay, so let's go to week 2 or section 2, which is a strategy continuum. The strategies that firm actually adopts. Now, do you think that companies are completely transactional or completely relational or both? Yeah?
So both.
Both.
I think both.
Okay. Now, Darius, can you explain to us where companies are very transactional or very relational or both? Can you explain to us?
Okay, I'll try. So, for example, the banking industry, when it comes to their processes concerning how to withdraw money or how to, let's say, deposit, it becomes totally transactional because they have rules and regulations or requirements that you follow. And then when it becomes relational, for example, the bank, when you open an account with them, the way the conversation goes in terms of updating you and giving you customer support systems when, let's say, your ATM is locked up or anything, creates that relationship for you. So in both sides, we'll say that they are either transactional, both transactional and relational.
Okay, fantastic. Who else? Juliana? Your hand is up, or it's a hold on.
Yes, it's old.
Whenever you lift up your hands, put it down as well. Okay, great. Yeah, so we know that strategy continuum actually talks about how the organization actually adopts a particular strategy going forward. And we when we actually discussed, the kinds of relationship that we have and described them, we realized that relationships are not the same. They are of different characteristics, all right? We realized that the relationships are also not, in time and space, do not exist at one place. Relationships exist in a different form, depending on time and space. So there are so many characteristics or so many descriptions that we can give to relationship. Similarly, organizations have relationships at different points. Either they have a relationship with you from the beginning, or the relationship ends at a particular point. We have relationship with different category of people. We have different relationship with different category of organizations, etc. So within the strategy continuum, there is the observation that some companies actually operate RM as an addition to TM as a concept, which means that the company is actually transactional oriented, but they adopt, relationship marketing in one way or the other. So they adopt RM as an addition to TM. And as we said, companies that are, or there are certain features of a sector of industry that lend themselves to be transactional, all right? The characteristics of the product itself is a transactional one. When you take, for example, the impulse buying, thing that we discussed, products that are of impulse buying are purely transactional in nature. I mean, PK, I think someone cited PK. Was it Sandra who actually cited PK in the example? PK doesn't cost much to buy, isn't it? So it's just about 2 cedis or 1 cedi. It is difficult to think that a company is actually spending 100,000 Ghana cedis just to maintain a relationship with PK buyers or people who actually buy PK, which is a chewing gum, all right, a gum. Now, in that sense, the product itself lends itself to transactional marketing, or that sector lends itself to transactional marketing. So it is difficult to think how organization would stand to benefit in creating a relationship, kind of environment. Having said that, we have still seen, we've seen very transactional oriented, sectors adopting RM as part of their modus operandi, all right? So there's that one. Also, there's a complete paradigm shift. Some businesses, were transactional in character, but they had actually gone on to, implement a relational paradigm or philosophy to change, completely from what you call a transactional to a relationship, which is the dominant theory in literature, that organizations must actually adopt, or must actually become a relational organizations, But of course, that, as we have said, would be dependent on, the characteristics of the firm or of the industry and the customers that they are dealing with, etc., including other factors. But those who actually talk about the, paradigm shift actually suppose that obviously, regardless of that, characteristics, organizations have to be relationship minded or have to be relational, in character. Then, of course, there's the idea that RM and TM may exist, separately. So you may have an organization that has 2 different, arms, and they have 2 different, paradigms, whether, RM or TM as a result. And then there are those that actually have cohabiting of RM and TM as a strategy. So some may have it as a strategy, some may have it as an addition to TM, which is more of operational level. All right, some may have it as a completely paradigm shift, from one. Now, let me give you an example and tell me whether that organization is transactional or relationship. When you take Coca-Cola, for example, the operations of Coca-Cola, is it TM or RM or both? Coca-Cola and the relationship with the final consumer, is it TM or RM or both? Khadija, TM. Okay, who else? Khadija, you said both, and then you said TM again. Sandra?
No, TM.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say both.
Both?
TM.
Okay, Ahene Sue says TM. Who will speak for TM people? Who will speak for both? Or who will speak for relationship? Who is speaking for TM? We have barely, 40 minutes remaining. Let's speed up.
Khadija, speak.
Khadija, speak for TM.
So, well, I think that Coca-Cola is basically transactional. There is nothing like any relational marketing involved in the buying of Coca-Cola, because it's even it has so many, let's say, even these hawkers, they also sell this Coca-Cola. They have this various retail places you can get Coca-Cola from. So your own is you just go and you demand for it and you get it.
Okay.
But I don't think there is any relational marketing after that.
Okay. Who else has a different perspective from, Khadija? Sandra?
Sir, Coca-Cola indeed it has its transactional aspect, but I also believe it has its relationship aspect as well. I quite remember when Coca-Cola started introducing the using of names, Kofi, Ama, and then the rest on their bottles. It's just making the customers feel that they are part of it. And then even their adverts, Coca-Cola, then they say, brr, the Coke side of life. How they interact with the audience, like how audience view the art on TV, it makes them feel as if they are part of it.
Excellent.
And then people go in there in search of Coca-Cola with their traditional names on it. So I believe it was just something they did to make their audience feel they were part of the company.
Excellent. Good point. Okay, Darius.
Yes, sir. You know, for those of us in the football community, we would say that Coca-Cola has played a very significant role in terms of RM, because for the most part, if you are watching Premier League, you would hardly see a commercial come by which is not Coca-Cola inspired. So it was more or less synonymous to Coca-Cola and football, or English football. So with that, we're able to have that relationship whereby basically you is drawn in your ears or in your mind that with a cold chilled Coke, you can watch it on a Sunday afternoon to just watch the game.
Okay, so great point. So they're using certain tools to keep relationship. Okay, great. Juliana.
So I also think it's both transactional and relationship, because even if someone goes to the shop to buy a bottle of Coke and they bring Pepsi or any other Coca, not Coke but other brands of cola drinks, you find out that the person is not happy. Sometimes if the person insists that they change it to Coca-Cola for them, and it is the relationship Coca-Cola has built with the consumers that has taken it to the level that people insist on getting Coca-Cola instead of other brands of cola drinks.
Okay, great point. So we see that, of course, the debate about transactional or relational or both is actually raging. But we see that, okay, let me read Gabriel. Gabriel says, Coca-Cola company tries to connect their product to something that is dear to their customers, to touch their hearts and find place for the brand at the core of who they are. Fantastic. So Khadija says, well, I think they adapted RM when consumer marketing came to play. Well, that's a good point. So we're saying that, yes, you can see the various, parts of marketing that Coca-Cola is using to create, relationship. As Khadija, as Juliana pointed out, we're looking at the quality of the product dimension. The idea that the company maintains a set standard quality, regardless of where you are. You drink Coca-Cola and there's consistency. We realize that in relationship marketing, one of the factors that actually keep relationship perhaps is consistent in the delivery of quality. So on the quality dimension, they've managed to create that bond with the customer, that the customer does not feel anything different from the taste of Coca-Cola they had yesterday and today as well. So typically from quality perspective, they actually keep in that. But also, Darius told us about sponsorship. The way followers of football actually see Coca-Cola as playing a part in bringing them that happiness, all right? So by Coca-Cola sponsoring a game that almost everybody wants in terms of the young people and, males dominant especially, all right? In the idea that Coca-Cola is actually contributing to bringing that happiness to them and continually making it obvious or visible that indeed we are part of making sure that you gain that happiness is a sort of arrangement that they're using to keep relationship with followers of football. And then, of course, the one that I like most is what Sandra actually pointed out. Share a Coke with. That was an amazing, promotion that Coca-Cola did. That borders on absolute relationship, as we're talking about, using the brand personality concept in marketing. We say that brand personality is when a brand character is actually in congruence with the character of the consumer. There's a relationship, isn't it? Now, Coca-Cola decided to share a Coke with Ama, share a Coke with Ajua, and all those names, that they printed out on the bottle of Coke. What they did was using the traditional names of people and invoking the values in those names. So when you take a bottle of Kofi brand of Coke, it tells you who Kofi is. Or when you take the Ama brand of Coke, it tells you who Ama is and go on to describe the values of Ama. Now, that is a relationship that they're striking with Ama consumers, that Ama, you are of a value, you are of this particular character. Can you imagine that going to a shop and taking a bottle of Coke, you are Ama, but that bottle of Coke is called Abena? Would you ever buy it or drink it? It will become difficult for you because you think that your personality is not embedded in that particular bottle of Coke. So that particular promotion that Coca-Cola did was one of the most innovative relationship marketing that you can ever have, that consumers can see themselves in just a bottle of Coke and would not want to buy any other product. So I remember when they did that promotion in a relationship marketing class, one of your predecessor groups, we did a demonstration. We did an observation. We put a Coke. In fact, I sent their names to Coca-Cola. I sent part of the student class, part of the class name to Coca-Cola to print it on the bottle of Coke. It was amazing. I mean, amazing thing to do. They brought it to us, and all the class came out, and I asked them to go in and then open the what do you call, the ice chest one by one. So the first person went, dipped their hand and took a bottle of Coke and saw a name, then instinctively said, "No, this is not me." Then they put it back and they were looking for liquid and they found their name, and they were jumping. One guy I remember, he's from Lagos. He saw his name, he took a bottle of Coke and he saw his name. He said, "Wow, Coca-Cola knows me." And we were laughing, It was so thrilled that people were so excited seeing their names, on the Coca-Cola bottle. And when they didn't find their names, they were disappointed. So those people in class that I didn't include there because it was an experiment. So not everybody's name was printed. So I left some people out. You can imagine the disappointment in their faces. They were so disappointed that they didn't find a bottle of Coke. So that promo was one of the most fascinating relationship programs you can ever have. And that actually got, that commitment. But it had a bad side because people complained that those, just like the experiment we did in class, those who did not find their names on the billboards, started complaining. And I think in the beginning, they did it in the South, the northern part of the country, that people didn't find it. Apparently, people started complaining about it. So they had to, scale it up and do something, to cover that. So that was a magic moment for relationship. Okay, so Celestina says, when you think of Netflix and chill, Coca-Cola always comes in mind because of the kind of brand positioning and relationship they have with their customers. Fantastic. And when you see pizza, hey, Khadija and pizza, you think of Coca-Cola as it comes together. Okay, all right. And Celestina agrees with you. Okay, so we know how companies actually combine the strategies, all right? But again, if you look at some of the promos that they do, sometimes, I don't know whether it's just a transactional promo or a relation, we can discuss that. But sometimes when you open the cork, they will tell you to strip off the inner, element, and you could have a certain, promo, let's say buy, get another free or something like that. I mean, organizations use so many other ways in order to foster relations, but we also agree that that kind of product, the FMCG, majority of times lend themselves to what? A transactional marketing environment, but you can still, issue or initiate a relationship based one. Okay, good examples. Okay, so the RMTM continuum, there are factors that actually, impact on, I would say, tactically influencing existing marketing management concept, which is marketing mix. So if there is a change in the strategy, sorry, if there's a change in strategy from, transactional marketing to relationship marketing, you know that the marketing mix has to be, what do you call, modified, as we have already seen, in order that can take care of the limitations, of the elements. For example, Coca-Cola and related organization practicing mass marketing, but has business-to-business relationship with distributors. Obviously, that aspect, as we said, sometimes TM and RM may exist, separately in the business, depending on which customer they're actually dealing with. All right. Then, of course, when real or anticipated cost of RM outweighs benefits, TM prevails. As we said, in an organization where when you actually implement, relationship marketing, the cost of implementing that is expensive. I don't see how you would want to implement an RM, because obviously, if the cost outweighs the benefit that you get, you surely want to keep a transactional marketing base. Charles, sir, question please. People stopped consuming Coke because of the excess sugar it contained. That's when they brought the sugar-free Coke. Do you consider that a TM because they just wanted customers to purchase their product, or they did that because of their relationship with customers? Okay, who can actually answer that? Charles' question. Yeah? Juliana?
So I think they did it mainly to improve their relationship marketing, because if you realize that, if they realize that because of the sugar, consumers are no longer buying it, and they want to even increase sales, and they produce the zero sugar, it means that the relationship between customers and then the company has been like increased or even maintained. So I think it's for both the relationship aspect and then the transactional aspect of the market.
Okay, great point. Khadija?
Well, I think at first, like Coca-Cola, they were mainly into this production orientation. So they just produced the Coca-Cola but then when this consumer orientation came and consumers started knowing what they really like, they realized maybe Coca-Cola had too much sugar. So they started complaining, and most of their consumers stopped purchasing the Coca-Cola. So the company had no choice than to go in for what the consumers want, and that's basically has got to do with the RM, because it improves the relationship between the Coca-Cola and their consumers. And even I think the bottled one, they also have a white label and a red. Some people will be buying and they'll be like, they want the one with the red. Some also will like the one with the white. So I think it's all in the form of improving their relationships and also improving their sales.
Excellent. Yeah, I suppose so, because obviously in a customer-centric organization is what actually listens to consumer concerns and consumer needs. So once there's a consumer concern that there was too much sugar, and they responded by giving a variant that actually reduces that, it's an attempt to deepening the relationship, isn't it? So I think I agree with that point. All right. Harriet also said, I think they did that to improve the relationship between their consumers. A great point. Okay. So obviously we have agreed that it could be in a transactional position, but you can do a lot more to enhance or to actually put in a relationship character. Good point. All right. So again, the RMTM continuum is RM as another perspective in marketing, as industry characteristics may influence strategy, organization structure, hierarchy may influence strategy. Of course, the first one we have actually explained. On the second one, how do you think that organization structure can actually influence RM strategy? Yeah. Yeah. How do you think that organizational structure could influence a strategy, whether transactional or relationship? Yeah. Any answer? Anyone? Okay, so if you have a very flat, what do you call, organizational structure, do you think, or if you have a very long organizational structure, which one of this do you think would influence relationship or would impact on a relationship? Juliana?
So the flat one will impact relationship more than the long one, because if a subordinate has to go through like 5 superiors to reach the manager or the head, the relationship between them, or even let's say you want to ask a question, even by the time the last superior will even ask the question, maybe they're even asking it in a wrong way, because people hear things differently. So your question or your concerns will not really be addressed the way you want it. But the flat one, if I'm a subordinate and I can just walk directly to the superior to ask a question, I think the relationship there will be a lot more deepened than the long system.
Excellent. Yes, so we're saying that not only does industry characteristics actually influence strategy, but also organizational structure. So if you have a very bureaucratic organization, then of course you're not likely to enhance relationship in the firm. So most of the time, flat organizational structure actually enhance relationship than a bureaucratic one. Good point. And then of course, the marketing implications, we say that obviously the dominant marketing orientation theory is restricted and has to be modified, which we have actually understood. And then, of course, in RM, you need more information systems. So any organizations that want to move into relationship marketing, you want to have a very good databases, customer databases that could actually inform, the kind of relationship that you could have with clients. As we said, the basic unit of relatability is about the identity of the customer. So in a highly relational settings, databases are crucial. What is the customer buying? How does the customer buy? Who they are? What is their network? So many other of these factors would influence, an organization's capacity to form relationship. Of course, we're saying that in an organizational setting or in a relationship setting, the quality of the relationship is as crucial as the quality of the product. So when we talk about quality in relationship terms, we're not only talking about or referring to quality of the product or services, but we're also talking about the quality of the relationship that organizations actually have. All right. Now, so, and then I'll go, of course, the idea of interdependence. All right. Now, we're saying that in organizations that are relational, there are no barriers in terms of departmental relationship. Those barriers had to be broken so that departments have continuous engagement with each other, because the time spent in satisfying one department actually affects the time spent in satisfying the customer. So you have to ensure that interdependence within the organization is actually ensured in order that can actually affect quality relationship with the customers. And then of course the idea of the role of internal marketing. In a relationship setting, the internal staff are actually treated the same way as the the external staff or the external customers. So you want to make sure that you implement internal marketing measures or conditions that could foster good relationship within. And as Benedicta said in your other class, the happiness of the staff would go ahead to actually influence the happiness of the customer. All right. Okay, good point. So drivers affecting strategic decision for RM and TM, which we have already talked about. We said that when there is a high acquisition cost relative to retention, obviously there is a relationship to be formed and to be maintained. All right. Okay. So and all these things have already been discussed. Okay. You could actually look at the frameworks and then talk about them in detail when you're asked. Okay, so just trying to get to another, because all these I'm sure you can actually go through that. Let's see. Okay. Okay, let's look at the week 3, or session 3. Now, any questions or contribution before we move to here? Yeah. Any questions or contribution before we move to here? Okay. Now, we discussed the relationship that we had, that we have in our individual settings, obviously in our, social settings. Now, organizations also have, separate or different relationships. Who can tell me the kinds of relationships that organizations have? If you have to discuss what kinds of relationship that organizations have. Yeah? What forms of relationship do you think exist in organization? Sandra? What forms of relationship do you think organizations have?
So I would say formal and informal.
Okay, so describe it.
The formal relationship, maybe a relationship between a subordinate and then a superior.
Mm-hmm.
But for informal relationship, I would say maybe relationship existing between people of the same ethnic groups in the organization.
Okay, so there is an internal, relationship that firms have with their staff, all right? So there's an internal relationship. Okay, what are the relationships that firms have? So with internal relationships, you have formal and informal. Good one. Okay, what other relationships do organizations have? What other relationships do organizations have beyond the internal relationship? Business to business, we know that, but we want you to, break it down also. Yeah. What other relationships do firms have? Yeah, I'm listening. Sandra. Go on, Sandra.
So with what also suggests, maybe a production hub, and then it has its relationship with other partners who are suppliers.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a supply relationship, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. And what other relationships do firms have? Khadija, we have already mentioned the internal relationship, colleagues and managers within. Yes, that's internal. What other relationships? So internal relationship with staff, we have a supply relationship. And what other relationships do firms have? Yeah? Wow. So are you guys saying that you do not have an idea what relationships firms have? Yeah? Firms have so many relationships, isn't it? Darius?
Yeah, business to business relationship.
Yeah, break that down.
Okay, so let's say if you are in the production business and you do not produce the end product, you may end up falling on another business that provides a component of your production. So you have a relationship with them, and then you always work with them in terms of when you get orders or when they get orders. So then you have that relationship together.
So that's a part of the supply side relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
So organizations have, internal, relationships with personnel, with staff. They have what do you call supply side relationships, and that could be broken down into different parts. Obviously, they have distribution, as Sandra is saying, relationship with distributors. So they have a customer partnerships or a customer relationships, with other organizations. Organizations also may have, other regulatory relationships, don't they? Don't organizations have regulatory relationships?
They do.
Excellent. So we know that firms would have a set of relationships, and that's what we are actually going to talk about, the core firm and its relationship that they have. Now, Sandra, when you talked about the supply side relationship, can you expand it for me? What types of supply relationship do you think firms would have? What supply side relationship do you think firms would have? Anyone can actually help. Go on.
Raw materials.
Yeah. So raw material supply, yes. What else? Who else can add? Who else can add? What about personnel, staff? Don't organizations get, personnel supplies? Like, don't we have, agencies that actually supplies organizations with staff, with personnel?
So we do.
Okay, so why are we sitting down? What about, consumables like, logistics, even transportation supplies, sometimes consultancies, yeah? All those things are supplies, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we're saying that, there are so many, supplies, partnerships that organizations have, and we'll actually go into that. But in terms of organizations and their, what do you call their relationships, the literature, highlights quite a number of, relationships that, firms have. And we say that the relationship that firms have, we tend to think about them as a dyadic relationship that is between the firm and the customer. But it goes beyond that. We know that organizations have multifaceted relationships, just as we're actually talking about. They have series of relationships, that goes beyond the relationship that they have with the customers. And so the four groupings of firm relationships that we have actually come to know is about customer partnerships between the firm and the customer, internal partnerships, obviously between the firm and its staff, employees, supplier partnerships, that is the firm and other suppliers, and then of course external partnerships, that the relationship between governments and the firm through taxation, through regulations, of course, in a relationship with NGOs, because organizations undertake, CSR activities. Sometimes they deal with NGOs on that grounds. Organizations deal with chiefs, yeah, other stakeholders like interest groups. So we have so many relationships that firm actually takes care of. Obviously, some of them will be put under the remit of marketing or relationship manager. Some of them will be put under the remit of, let's say, the PR department, and they see to that. Some of them will be put under the remit of, what do you call CSR director, whatever. But all of them are the relationships that firms actually have. Gabriel says firms relate with government because government's goal is to ensure economic stability and growth. Both of them have a different goal set, but very co-dependent. Great. Okay. So if you look at the various relationship types that a firm, Doyle, for example, talks about the core firm and its relationships, which you're talking about. Hunt and Morgan talks about the 4 partnerships and 10 relationships. And Christopher et al. Talked about the 6 market theory. And then, of course, Gamerson's 30 hours of relationship. So if you take, Christopher and et al.'s, 6 market framework, say that firms, relationship that exists in firms, in terms of the customer market relationship, you can find these sets of relationships. So within the customer market, not only are we talking about the core or the final consumer, but we are talking about other people that actually revolve around the word customer, including, internal markets, all right, which is the staff within the firm. You know that if, and as Benedicta said, if the staff within the firm are not well treated, it could have an impact on what you call the final consumer, all right? Because, you know, the relationship is, you know, is such that it is the effect of, you know, staff attitudes and behavior that the customer would actually get satisfaction. Then, of course, there is what they call the referral market, all right? Within the business or within the company or whatever, you realize that customers may not necessarily come through your direct activities like your PR or your promotion activity, etc. Customers could be referred, you know, by, you know, other groups of people. So if you take a typical example of a pharmaceutical, all right, who do you think, you know, will be the referral market in the pharmaceutical situation? Which group of people do you think would serve as a referral market for pharmaceutical, you know, markets? So
doctors.
Doctors, isn't it? Exactly. So the Sandra.
So I was thinking food and drugs board.
Yeah, the food and drug board will come in, but you realize that doctors are the immediate referral market for pharmaceutical, isn't it? Because you go to hospital and they are prescribing medicine for you and they say, oh, go and buy Code, go and buy this, go and buy that. So the referral market within pharmaceutical, the referral market closely is the medical, medical staff or people who are within that. Who else can give me an industry and tell me what the referral market would be like? Yeah. Who else can actually give me an industry and tell me the referral market? Yeah. We have 10 minutes. Let's wrap up. Referral market. Darius. Yeah, Darius.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, sir. Please. The cement producing company like Gastem.
Yeah.
The cement producing company like Gastem.
Yes.
So the referral will be construction companies or estate developers.
Okay, good point. But I think the referral could be much more closer. Would be the builders, isn't it?
Yeah, those are the construction guys.
Okay, good. That's what you're referring to. Okay, that's a very good. That's a very good point. So in cement, industry, those building industries, the referral market will be the construction guys. Those guys who actually do, and they usually influence a lot, isn't it? They tell the builders or those who are actually sponsoring the project, oh, get this cement. It's better than this one, isn't it? So that's a good.
Yeah.
All right, great point. Now, if you take supplier markets as we have identified, so agents as in, what we call employment agencies are supplier market, even universities are supplier market, aren't they? Because right from level 400, you're going into the world of work, all right? So we are actually supplying the companies with expertise, with personnel, isn't it? So universities are supplier market in terms of, personnel. Obviously, we have, as we said, the money market, the banks. The banks supplies money or capital to firms, so they could actually, be supply markets within that sense, within that instance. And then, of course, employee recruitment markets. All right, so that could even be much more, related to, the agencies, as we said. I mean, a particular segment, a particular market could belong to 2 or 3 different, segments, over here. And then, of course, the influence market could also be the medical staff in terms of pharmaceuticals. They could actually influence. But of course, the medical staff could also influence a market of, for example, alcoholic industry. All right, the beverages. All right, you see the role that the medical fraternity actually played in collapsing the the what do you call the tobacco industry. That's a huge influence market for that, because they played quite a lot of role in making sure that the tobacco company or the tobacco industry's potency is actually reduced. So these are some of the relationships that you have to think about as a relationship manager. The kinds of market that you serve in, and the kind of relationship you must have, with them. And so you see that quite a lot of pharmaceuticals actually sponsor, in Europe and America. I mean, it's illegal, but majority of time they sponsor the work of the medical, fraternity. Even in Ghana, you see a lot of sponsorship coming from. So companies actually use sponsorship to influence the behavior of these referrals and these influencers in order that they could actually be in their good books. Otherwise, they would be promoting other brands over you. Yeah. Okay. So most of these, I think we could, go and read more about them. And all these frameworks are about the relationship evolution, etc. It's easy for you to go through them, so that we can finish early and then, tackle the analytics part. Next week when we come in, we'll discuss, the various, what do you call relationships into detail. Any questions or contribution? Any questions or contribution? Okay, Harriet, sir, please, what is the difference between internal market and employee market? Okay, so internal market is the same as the employee market, but or let's say the employee market is a subset of internal market. Internal market may extend beyond employee, all right? So you could actually have the board of directors, which are also part of, the internal market. Don't forget, the internal market, you have the employees, you have, the board of directors. Of course, you could actually, kind of differentiate between the employee and management as well, all right, as a separate entity. But they all come under the internal market. Is that clear, Harry? Is that clear, Harriet? Did you get the explanation? Okay, yes, you did. All right, thank you. All right, guys. Prince says, please, wouldn't the company sponsoring hospitals and doctors compromise them? Exactly. So that's the point. That's why in Europe and America, pharmaceuticals are not allowed to sponsor, issues. I mean, things like, the activities of the medical associations or, the hospitals, because that could actually compromise, their behavior. But obviously in Ghana, we see quite a lot of times the activities of Ghana Medical Association being sponsored by so many, of these, what do you call, institutions or organizations, which is just the point that you're making, because it can actually compromise that. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Hope to see you next week. No, tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, what time?
7:50.
7:50.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Very early morning again. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. And don't forget social distance and use your mask. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your day.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.